I still remember the first time I encountered the term neural cipher. It was whispered among my colleagues in hushed tones, a code that hinted at secrets too dark for public discourse. At the time, I was still Dr. Alex Mercer, a neuroscientist celebrated for my research into synaptic plasticity. Now, as Detective Mercer, I find myself haunted by the idea that our minds can be rewritten like computer programs, manipulated by unseen forces. This is my story. It began on a rainy November evening. I was working late in my modest apartment office on the outskirts of the city when a call shattered the monotony of routine. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, a voice that belonged to someone who knew secrets I had long tried to bury. "Dr. Mercer, we need your expertise. There's been another incident." The words were terse, but I recognized the trembling urgency in them. I set aside my research notes and stepped out into the drizzle, the city's neon reflections mingling with my doubts. The incident site was a derelict warehouse near the industrial district. I arrived alongside Officer Daniels, a pragmatic cop with a soft spot for cases that defied simple explanation. "We've seen a pattern emerging, Mercer," he said as we ducked under the police tape. "Victims. Brains manipulated, like someone's tampered with their neural pathways." I nodded silently, my mind racing back to experiments I'd once considered radical and dangerous. Inside the cold, echoing halls of the warehouse, the scene was ghastly. The victim lay contorted on a concrete floor, a grotesque mask of pain frozen on his face. But it wasn't just the physical trauma that unsettled me. His brain, exposed in a crude surgical incision, bore traces of what appeared to be digital imprints, traces of neural reprogramming. The forensic team had barely begun their work, but I recognized patterns reminiscent of experimental neuromodulation techniques that I'd once read about in classified research documents. My pulse quickened with both scientific curiosity and an unnameable dread. I crouched beside the body, mentally replaying the myriad experiments I'd undertaken in the past. The idea that our neural circuits could be rewritten was once a tantalizing prospect in my work, a glimpse into the future of treating mental illness. But the ethical boundaries were razor thin. Now, confronted with a victim who had clearly been manipulated against his will, I couldn't help but feel a personal connection, a shudder of familiarity that was impossible to ignore. Over the next few days, I combed through every shred of evidence, tracing the subtle digital signatures left in the neural tissue. My colleagues in forensic neuroscience confirmed that these imprints were not random. They were the work of an experimental technology designed to rewrite memories, rewire emotional responses, and perhaps even control behavior. Each victim's brain told a similar story, a deliberate, calculated reconfiguration of neural circuits that erased part of their identity. My investigation led me to the fringes of the scientific underworld, a secret network of researchers, renegade technologists, and shadowy figures funding experiments on the human mind. I began receiving anonymous tips, encrypted messages that mentioned Project Rebirth, a project shrouded in secrecy and alleged to have been terminated years ago. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that these grotesque crimes were not random acts of violence, but part of a deliberate experiment, a search for a method to rewrite the human mind. Late one evening, as I pored over a collection of hastily scribbled notes and redacted documents in my apartment, I received an unexpected visitor. A man in a dark suit, his face partly obscured by the shadow of a fedora, introduced himself as Dr. Edmund Rayner, a name that sent a shiver down my spine. I recalled that he had been one of the leading researchers in neuromodulation decades ago, before mysteriously disappearing from the scientific community. His eyes gleamed with a mixture of desperation and malevolence as he offered to reveal details about the neural cipher. "Alex," he said, using my first name as if we were old acquaintances, "you have to understand that what you're witnessing is just the beginning. The human brain is a canvas waiting to be repainted, and there are those who want to control every brushstroke." I listened as he explained that Project Rebirth was more than an experiment. It was an attempt to harness the very essence of human identity. According to Rayner, the victims were merely test subjects in a larger scheme to implant false memories, erase traumatic ones, and even create entirely new personas. As disturbing as his words were, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a connection to my own past. In a series of sleepless nights, I delved deep into my own research archives. Late one night, as the city slumbered under the weight of winter, I discovered a file tucked away in my old lab notebooks, one I had almost forgotten. It detailed experiments into the malleability of human memory and the possibility of erasing or altering emotional responses. The signature on the file was my own, yet the data was far more advanced than anything I had ever published. A creeping realization set in. Perhaps, in the desperate hours of my early research career, I had allowed myself to be drawn into dangerous territory. My own memories, the ones I clung to so desperately, might have been tampered with. I started questioning every fragment of my past. The loss of my sister, once a clear, painful memory, suddenly seemed hazy, almost as if someone had tried to blur the edges of my grief. I began to suspect that the neural cipher wasn't just a tool for criminal manipulation, but a mechanism that could rewrite history itself, personal and collective. The implications were terrifying. What if the traumas that defined me had been altered, sanitized, or even implanted to serve someone else's agenda? Determined to confront these demons, I arranged a clandestine meeting with Rayner in a secluded, abandoned observatory on the city's outskirts. The building was as dilapidated as my hopes of finding answers, yet it offered the isolation we needed. In the dim light of a single overhead lamp, Rayner laid out his vision. "You see, Alex," he began, "our minds are the final frontier. For too long, society has been at the mercy of raw emotion and uncontrolled impulses. Project Rebirth was conceived as a way to harness and direct these forces to create a more orderly, predictable human experience. But it's gone too far now. The technology is in the wrong hands." His words struck a chord within me. I recalled the countless nights I had spent agonizing over the ethical implications of altering the human brain. "But at what cost?" I challenged him. "Can you really justify sacrificing free will and authentic emotion for the sake of control?" Rayner's expression hardened. "I'm not here to justify it to you, Alex. I'm here to show you the truth." He reached into his coat and produced a small, portable device, a sleek, metallic cube humming with latent energy. "This is the neural cipher. It's capable of scanning, rewriting, and even deleting parts of the brain's network. It can erase entire memories and insert new ones seamlessly." I examined the device with a mix of awe and horror. My scientific mind recognized its potential, but its power to reshape identity was abhorrent. "Who's using it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rayner hesitated, as if weighing the consequences of naming names. "A clandestine group known only as the Curators. They believe that by controlling memories, they can create a society free of chaos, free of pain. But in doing so, they strip us of what makes us human." His eyes, though tired, burned with a conviction that was impossible to ignore. Armed with this new knowledge, I embarked on a mission that blurred the boundaries between my past and present. I dug deeper into the network of the Curators, infiltrating underground gatherings and following leads that took me to the darkest corners of the city. Each step revealed more disturbing evidence: victims whose personalities had been erased, families torn apart by inexplicable changes in behavior, and an undercurrent of fear that seemed to permeate every interaction. One particularly harrowing case involved a woman named Mara. I met her in a cramped apartment filled with scattered research papers and outdated medical equipment. Her eyes, once vibrant and full of life, now held a vacant emptiness that spoke of deep inner turmoil. "I don't remember who I am anymore," she confessed, her voice trembling as she clutched an old photograph of a smiling family. "I wake up every day feeling like I'm living someone else's life." Her words cut through me. Mara's plight was a stark reminder that the neural cipher was not just a tool for criminal experimentation, it was a weapon of profound psychological warfare. I promised her that I would do everything in my power to restore her identity and bring those responsible to justice. Yet as I comforted her, I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that my own identity was at stake. My investigation reached a crescendo when I discovered that the curators were planning a major demonstration of their technology, a mass reprogramming event that could potentially affect hundreds of lives. The event was scheduled to take place at an abandoned research facility, once a hub of pioneering neuroscientific breakthroughs. I knew that if I didn't act, countless innocent people might fall victim to this insidious experiment. Under cover of darkness, I infiltrated the facility. The building was a labyrinth of decaying corridors and abandoned laboratories, a silent testament to forgotten ambitions. I moved cautiously, relying on both my scientific acumen and detective instincts to guide me. In one room, I found a cache of experimental devices, each one eerily similar to the neural cipher I had seen with Raina. Among them was a logbook, its pages filled with meticulous notes on the planned reprogramming event. As I pored over the logbook, a familiar name leapt out at me, my own. I discovered entries detailing experiments conducted on a subject alpha, experiments that eerily paralleled my own early work. My heart pounded as I realized that I had been unwittingly involved in these tests. The memory of my sister's sudden disappearance, long dismissed as a tragic accident, began to re-emerge with startling clarity. Had my own memories been altered? Was the pain of loss real, or had it been engineered to serve a hidden purpose? The realization was shattering. I sank to the floor, the cold concrete beneath me a harsh reminder of the fragility of identity. In that moment of despair, I vowed that I would uncover the full extent of the conspiracy, no matter the personal cost. The trail of clues pointed to a mastermind who had manipulated the threads of memory, not only in the victims but in me as well. This revelation transformed my mission from one of scientific inquiry into a deeply personal quest for truth and redemption. I began tracking the mastermind through a series of covert interviews with former insiders, disillusioned scientists, ex-members of the curators, and even a few government officials who had been involved in classified projects. One name kept recurring in every conversation: Dr. Nathaniel Reed. Reed was a visionary, a man who had once dreamed of harnessing the power of the human mind for the betterment of society. But somewhere along the way, his ambition had turned into something far more sinister. According to my informants, Reed had been the architect behind the neural cipher and the orchestrator of Project Rebirth. His ultimate goal was to reset society by erasing the memories that defined its citizens. Armed with this knowledge, I set out to confront Reed. I arranged a meeting under the guise of a research collaboration, knowing that I had little choice but to lure him into the light. The meeting was set in a sleek, modern conference room, a stark contrast to the grim decay of the research facility. Reed greeted me with a calm, almost disarming smile. His eyes, however, betrayed a steely determination that hinted at the depths of his convictions. "Dr. Mercer," he said, extending a hand, "I've been expecting you. I trust you've come to see the potential of what we can achieve." His tone was smooth, persuasive, almost hypnotic. I steeled myself against his charm, reminding myself that behind that smile lay a man capable of erasing not just memories, but entire lives. Our conversation was a battle of wits. Reed spoke eloquently about a future where pain, regret, and chaos could be eliminated, where every individual could be sculpted into a refined, controlled version of themselves. He argued that the neural cipher was merely a tool, a means to an end. "Imagine a world where no one suffers from the burden of traumatic memories," he proposed. "A world where every person has the opportunity to start anew, unburdened by the mistakes of the past." I countered with the undeniable truth of human imperfection. But what makes us human is our ability to feel. The sorrow, the joy, the pain, and the triumph. And if you erase those experiences, you erase the very essence of our existence. We're not machines that can be reprogrammed. My words felt inadequate in the face of his cold logic, yet they were driven by a conviction I could no longer ignore. Reed's smile never wavered as he listened. "You speak of free will as if it's an unassailable right," he replied. "But what if free will is nothing more than an illusion, a byproduct of a chaotic system in need of order? I offer you a glimpse of a world free from the burdens of memory, where every person is free to reinvent themselves." His gaze bore into me, and in that moment, I saw something I had long feared, a reflection of the same desperation that had once driven me to experiment with the human mind. The conversation ended without a clear resolution, but it left me with more questions than answers. As I left the conference room, my mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Had Reed truly envisioned a utopia, or was his dream nothing more than a dystopian nightmare waiting to unfold? The deeper I dug, the more I realized that the boundaries between progress and monstrosity were disturbingly thin. Returning to the abandoned facility, I gathered evidence and documented every detail. My discoveries painted a chilling picture of a society on the brink of losing its soul. The logbook, the experimental devices, and the recurring references to my own research all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. The neural cipher was not merely a tool for control. It was a weapon designed to erase the very core of our humanity. Armed with incontrovertible evidence, I turned to the one person who had once been a mentor and confidant in my early days of neuroscience, Professor Elena Morales. Elena was a brilliant mind who had long warned me about the ethical pitfalls of our research. When I presented her with the findings, she looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "Alex, you must understand," she said softly. "Sometimes the truth is too dangerous for the world to know. But it is our duty to preserve what makes us human, even if it means standing alone against the tide of progress." Together, Elena and I devised a plan to expose the curators and halt the impending reprogramming event. We reached out to trusted allies in the scientific community, individuals who had long been marginalized by the same institutions that now sought to control our minds. In a series of covert meetings, we shared our evidence and forged a network of resistance. Every meeting, every whispered conversation in shadowed hallways, strengthened our resolve to fight against a future where memory itself could be commodified. The night of the planned reprogramming arrived with an eerie stillness. In the dead of winter, the abandoned research facility became a theater of terror as the curators prepared their devices. I, along with a small band of resistance fighters, infiltrated the facility once more. Our objective was clear: disable the neural cipher devices and broadcast the evidence of their sinister purpose to the world. The corridors were dark and silent as we moved, our flashlights slicing through the gloom. I led the charge to the central control room, where the main neural cipher device was housed, a towering apparatus of wires and glowing panels humming with a malevolent energy. As I approached, I could feel the oppressive weight of the technology pressing against my mind, a reminder of the fragility of free will. In the control room, chaos erupted. Members of the curators, clad in dark uniforms, swarmed to defend their creation. A fierce struggle ensued. Amid the cacophony of shouts and the rapid exchange of gunfire, I focused on the device. With trembling hands, I reached for the circuit panel, recalling every detail of my early experiments. Every nerve in my body screamed in protest as I began to dismantle connections, each wire representing a stolen piece of someone's identity. Time slowed as I worked, the dissonant sounds of conflict fading into the background. I remembered the faces of the victims, their identities twisted by the cold logic of the neural cipher, and I thought of my own blurred memories, of my sister, whose loss had long been a silent agony in the recesses of my mind. In that moment, I realized that the fight was not only for the victims but for the preservation of every fragment of humanity that had been manipulated and stolen. With a final, resolute effort, I disconnected the main power conduit. The humming of the device faltered, then died altogether, plunging the room into a heavy silence. Shouts of disbelief and anger filled the air as our adversaries realized that their control had been broken. We quickly seized the moment, securing the evidence and ensuring that the devices could never be reactivated. In the aftermath, as dawn broke over the city, I stood amidst the wreckage of a dream gone awry. I had succeeded in halting the immediate threat, but the cost had been immeasurable. The evidence we collected was broadcast to the world, sparking outrage and debate over the ethics of neuroscientific experimentation. Trials were held, and the curators were exposed as a dangerous cabal willing to sacrifice individual identity for a warped vision of societal perfection. Yet, as I sat in my quiet apartment weeks later, the noise of public discourse fading into the background, I was left with a lingering sense of disquiet. I began to question the nature of memory itself. If memories could be rewritten, who was to say that the pain of loss or the joy of triumph was ever truly authentic? Had I, in my quest for truth, become entangled in the very web of manipulation I sought to destroy? I spent long nights in introspection, poring over my own recollections, searching for the truth about my past. Every detail of my childhood, every moment of grief and happiness was now subject to doubt. The neural cipher had forced me to confront the unsettling possibility that my own identity might be a mosaic of tampered memories, a blend of genuine experiences and implanted narratives. The revelation was both liberating and terrifying. In embracing the possibility of change, I also accepted the risk of losing myself entirely. Through it all, Professor Morales remained a steadfast presence, reminding me that our struggles were not in vain. "Alex," she said one evening as we watched the sunset from her modest garden, "the human mind is resilient. Even if parts of our past are altered, the essence of who we are endures in the choices we make every day." Her words resonated deeply, a beacon of hope in a world where the line between science and horror had been irrevocably blurred. In the months that followed, I dedicated myself to restoring what had been lost, not just for the victims, but for myself. I resumed my research, this time with a renewed commitment to ethical boundaries and the sanctity of human memory. Every experiment, every discovery was a step toward reclaiming the authenticity of our experiences. I became an advocate for responsible neuroscientific inquiry, determined to ensure that the power to shape our minds would never again be wielded without consent or accountability. Looking back on those tumultuous events, I realized that the neural cipher was more than a technological marvel or a tool for control. It was a mirror held up to our deepest fears and desires, a reminder that the human brain, in all its complexity, is the repository of our souls. The struggle to preserve its sanctity is a battle that must be fought every day against both external forces and the internal shadows of our own pasts. My journey continues, and I remain vigilant against those who would tamper with the delicate balance of memory and identity. The scars of my own experiences serve as a constant reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition, but they also inspire me to protect the fragile beauty of human consciousness. I write these words not as a confession, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a spirit that, even when faced with the darkest of experiments, finds a way to endure, to heal, and to reclaim its rightful place in the tapestry of life. In the quiet moments between duty and reflection, I often wonder about the future. Will we ever fully understand the intricacies of the mind, or will we always be caught in a web of our own making? The neural cipher taught me that the pursuit of knowledge is a double-edged sword, capable of both enlightening and destroying. But if there is one truth I have come to embrace, it is that our memories, in all their imperfections, are what make us truly human. And no technology, no matter how advanced, can ever replace the authenticity of lived experience. As I close this chapter of my story, I am left with both hope and caution. The battle against the forces that seek to manipulate our minds is far from over, but each day brings new opportunities to defend the sanctity of our inner worlds. I remain a guardian of memory, a reluctant detective with a past as enigmatic as the neural cipher itself, forever committed to unraveling the mysteries of the human mind and protecting the essence of who we are. That is the story of the neural cipher, a tale of scientific ambition, ethical dilemmas, and the relentless quest to preserve the truth of our human identity. Every moment, every decision carries the weight of our memories, and it is up to us to ensure that the delicate tapestry of our lives remains unaltered by forces that seek to control it.